On February 23, 1984, 5 tourists boarded a dive boat off Maui Island, Hawaii. They planned to explore an underwater lava cave called Cape Kanau. The group included John Baird, Tom Cullen, Masao Nakin, and Preston Penny. They were led by Ed Robinson, a professional diving guide. His assistant, Sue, joined as safety diver. None of the divers were trained in cave diving. The cave was long and narrow. It had 3 side chambers, the small chamber, the turtle chamber, and the deep chamber. One section was tight, with a silty floor and poor visibility. The group planned to check their air at a midpoint exit. Anyone below 1500 psi would turn back.
Single trunk passage, one tight spot, deep chamber at 100 feet. If you hit 1500 psi, you turn back. Stick with your light buddy, do not stir the silt.
The divers entered the cave in the morning. At first, visibility was clear. They swam single file, with Robinson in front and Sue in the rear. It was peaceful at first. Just coral shadows and lava stone. The group passed the middle exit and went deeper. They reached the deep chamber, the farthest part of the system. Inside the deep chamber, Tom Cullen checked his tank. He was down to 600 psi. John Baird also noticed his air was low. They both signaled to leave. Robinson led them toward the exit, but Cullen's sonic alarm began to sound. He was out of air. Robinson shared his backup regulator. The 3 surfaced safely, but only Baird had air left in his tank, just 100 psi. Back in the deep chamber, the water had turned cloudy. The floor had been disturbed. Visibility dropped to near 0. Sue signaled the others to exit. Masao Nakin squeezed through the restriction. Preston Penny was slower. Sue pushed him through. She followed, surrounded by a cloud of silt.
Preston froze. He couldn't move. I pushed him through.
Outside the cave, Robinson counted the divers. 1 was missing. It was Preston. Robinson strapped on a fresh tank and re-entered the cave. He swam quickly toward the deep chamber. Inside, he found Preston Penny. He was floating, motionless in the chamber. His regulator had slipped from his mouth. There were no signs of movement. Robinson brought him to the surface. Attempts to revive him were unsuccessful. The group returned to shore later that day. Preston Penny was 37 years old. Authorities reviewed the dive operation. New warnings were posted around the cave. The site became known as one of Hawaii's most dangerous underwater spots. Cave diving requires more than confidence. One misstep in a silt-filled passage can change everything. Preston Penny never made it back. His story is a reminder. Some places aren't meant to be explored without proper training.
Okay, so let's picture this scene. It's February 23rd, 1984. You're in Maui, Hawaii. I mean, the sun's out, the water's gorgeous. It's a perfect day for an adventure, right? You're on Ed Robinson's dive boat, and the plan is to explore this really captivating underwater cave. Seems incredible. Now, on the boat that day, you had a few tourists. John Baird, Tom Cullen, Masao Nakin, and Preston Penny, who was 37. And they were all open water certified. Now, that sounds good, but it basically means they're comfortable out in the open, where going up to the surface is easy.
Right. A direct descent is always an option.
Exactly. But, and this is the key thing, none of them had actual cave diving training.
Which is a completely different ballgame. You're in an overhead environment, no straight shot to the surface.
Absolutely. And with them, you've got Ed Robinson, the dive leader, and his assistant, Sue, so the spot they pick. A cave on Cape Kanau. Robinson knew it. He'd actually taken clients there before. The plan seemed pretty basic on paper. Everybody gets one light. Robinson's going to film the whole thing. And Sue, she's the safety diver, hangs back at the rear.
Yeah, seems like a plan.
But when you start digging into what happened, that simple setup, it starts to look a bit, well, chillin'.
And that's really what we want to do in this deep dive, isn't it? And we need to go beyond just, hey, it was a beautiful dive that went wrong. We need to unpack the why.
Mm-hmm.
What were those critical factors? We'll look at the dangers of these complex places, underwater caves, the huge importance of being properly prepared, and, those risks that aren't always obvious even when things seem routine.
Okay, so let's paint a picture of the cave itself. Cape Kino Cave. What were they actually swimming into? The descriptions say it's mostly like one main tunnel, a single trunk passage, got entrances at both ends.
Okay.
But off this main passage, there are 3 side chambers. They call them the small chamber, the turtle chamber, and then the deep chamber. And that deep chamber, that goes down pretty far, like 90, maybe 100 feet.
That's quite deep for this kind of dive, especially for divers without specific cave training.
Yeah, and our sources mention tight spots. Even one part described as very narrow.
Uh-oh. Restrictions.
Exactly. And the floor, super silty, which means, One wrong fin kick.
And your visibility just goes to zero instantly. Like swimming in milk.
Right. There was also this thing called the middle exit, a smaller way out, but you could only really see the sunlight if you were, like, directly underneath it. Not a big obvious exit. Okay, so the dive starts. Everyone's got these 80 cubic foot tanks filled up to 3,000 psi.
Which sounds like a lot of air. And it is, for regular open water.
Mm-hmm.
But inside a cave, maybe fighting current, maybe dealing with stress or silt, your air consumption can go through the roof.
So Robinson's in the lead. He's still filming. Sue's at the back, the safety diver, and they have this crucial checkpoint planned.
Right.
The middle exit, that's where they'd check their air. The rule was, if anyone's got less than 1,500 psi, half a tank, basically they turn around. Simple rule.
Single trunk passage, one tight spot, deep chamber at 100 feet. If you hit 1,500 psi, you turn back. Stick with your light buddy. Do not stir the silt.
Except it wasn't that simple in practice, was it? The check did happen. They did the air check, and the group decided to keep going. But later analysis, this guy Prosser looked into it, and his findings were pretty stark. He found that at that exact point, the middle exit air check, at least half the group, were already at or even beyond the safe limits generally accepted for cave diving air management.
Half the group. Already.
Yeah. You know the rule of thirds in cave diving. It's fundamental.
Use a third in, a third out, keep a third for emergencies.
Exactly. It's non-negotiable. So if you start with 3,000 psi, being down to 1,500 psi at the halfway point means you've already blown through half your air just getting there. You got nothing like that one-third reserve left for the exit, plus any potential problems.
Wow.
So right there, at the planned safety check, the plan had fundamentally broken down based on actual air consumption. That decision to proceed, it was critical.
So, okay, half the team's already pushing their air supply, but they press on deeper into the cave, and predictably, perhaps, things start to go wrong pretty quickly after that. In that deep chamber, the deepest part, Tom Collin looks at his gauge. He's down to 600 psi.
Oof. That's basically emergency air. You are running on fumes at that point, deep in a cave.
He tells Robinson straight away, I need to get out. And John Baird, seeing Collin, checks his own air. He's also at 600 psi.
Oh, boy.
And he says the visibility around them is just starting to plummet. The silt's getting kicked up.
So now you've got multiple divers, low on air, in deteriorating conditions. That earlier decision at the air check is really coming home to roost now, isn't it?
It really is. It's that cascading effect you mentioned.
Yeah, it's textbook. One problem leads to another, and your options just narrow down incredibly fast, especially when visibility drops. Panic can set in, rational decision-making goes out the window. So Robinson, the leader, he makes a call. He decides to take Collin and Baird out, but not back the way they came. He aims for a third entrance.
A different way out, while low on air.
Seems like it. And on the way, Collin's audible low air alarm goes off. He's completely out. He has to start sharing air with Robinson. Buddy breathing, essentially. By the time those three make it to the surface, Baird is the only one with any air left in his tank at all. And it was just 100 psi.
Wow. That's cutting it incredibly fine.
Incredibly fine. It shows you how precarious the whole situation had become. Multiple divers, just moments from being completely out of air.
Okay, but what about the others, back in the deep chamber? Penny, Nakan, and Sue. While Robinson was exiting with Collin and Baird, things got even worse back there. Visibility apparently went to near zero.
Total silt out, probably. Just feeling your way, maybe only seeing the glow of lights.
Exactly. Sue, the assistant leader, realizes how bad it is and signals for Nakan and Penny to exit the chamber, presumably back towards the middle exit. Nakan gets through the restriction, but it sounds like it was difficult. And Preston Penny, apparently he had trouble, maybe got stuck or disoriented. The report says he had to be pushed through the restriction.
That sounds incredibly stressful. And zero visibility, being physically maneuvered through a tight spot.
Yeah. And Sue herself said she came out of that chamber in just a thick cloud of silt. She couldn't see anything.
And again, without that specific cave training, how do you handle that? How do you maintain buoyancy, avoid kicking up more silt, stay calm, keep track of your buddy or your line? If there even was one.
Which there wasn't, right. No guideline.
Crucially, no guideline mentioned. That's your lifeline back to safety in zero visibility.
So Nakan and Sue, they managed to get out via the middle exit. Robinson, having surfaced with Collin and Baird, realizes someone's missing. Preston Penny, he grabs an extra tank and goes back in.
A rescue attempt.
Yeah. He returns a few minutes later with Penny, but it was too late. They tried to revive him, but he didn't make it.
Oh, that's tragic.
The analysis later found Penny on the bottom. He still had his camera in one hand, his light in the other. All his gear was on correctly.
Got the tank.
empty, completely empty. And interestingly, they found him in a part of the cave where the visibility was actually okay at that moment.
So it wasn't necessarily the silt right there that got him. It was likely the cumulative stress, the disorientation, the exertion, maybe panic during that zero visibility exit from the deep chamber,
Yeah.
ultimately leading to running out of air.
A terrible outcome. So we started this deep dive talking about, this beautiful day, this thrilling adventure in Maui. But the story took such a dark turn. And looking back, the source material, especially that analysis by Prosser, it really hammers home some critical lessons.
Absolutely.
The absolute need for proper formal training for hazardous activities like cave diving and meticulous planning. You can't just wing it.
No, you really can't. The environment demands respect, whether it's a cave, a mountain, whatever.
Yeah.
Underestimating it or overestimating your abilities, the consequences can be severe. And Prosser's analysis, it doesn't just point to one mistake. It was like a chain reaction, right? A cascade of failures, many of which were set in motion before they even got deep into the cave.
Yeah, you listed them earlier.
Right. No formal cave training, that's the big one. No specific emergency plan if things went south. The air plan they did have, it was too complex for their ability level, clearly. No guideline laid down.
The lifeline.
The lifeline, exactly.
Yeah.
And that blatant disregard for the rule of thirds, with half the team already past safe limits way back at that middle exit check, it just underscores how vital it is to know your limits, stick to safety protocols, and critically, know the limits and training of the people you're relying on. It's not just about you. And, these lessons, they aren't just for divers. They apply way beyond that.
Oh, for sure.
Anytime you're doing something high risk, whether it's physical adventure or even like a complex project at work, understanding the environment, prepping for what could go wrong, clear communication, sticking to agreed protocols, it's all the same core principles, especially when you're stepping into the unknown.
And the source material ends with this really striking caution. It's quite provocative, actually. It says, and I'm quoting loosely here, "Be especially cautious about undertaking a hazardous adventure with people you don't know." And then it adds, "It might even be safer to do it alone."
Wow. That really pushes against the usual safety in numbers idea, doesn't it?
It does. It makes you think, what does that really mean? Is it about the danger of assuming competence, relying on people whose actual abilities under pressure you just don't know?
Yeah, the risk of a weak link in a critical moment, maybe. Or group dynamics leading to bad decisions.
It's definitely something to chew on. What does that surprising thought mean for you, the listener, in your own adventures or challenging situations? Something to mull over until our next deep dive.